Agricultural officials have said the public should exercise caution with regard to the African Swine Fever virus. Now, this affects pigs, and it has been found in the northwest in Mpumalanga as well as Gauteng, and recently in the Heilbron area in the Free State. This despite the fact that this version of the swine fever does not affect humans, which is an important part to put out here. It does, however, affect pigs. Now, joining us in studio with us, we've got Dr Dietana Nemudzivhadi, who's in studio with us to tell us a little bit more. She's the Chief Director of Veterinary Services in Gauteng. Good to have you, Doc. Thanks so much for coming in.
Good morning.
So, let's sort of get to the crux of this all. People worried about themselves and their health, but is this something that doesn't necessarily affect humans, but rather pigs?
I think I need to state it very clearly, a resounding no.
Okay.
African swine fever does not affect human beings, has never. It's purely a disease of pigs. So that is the concern that we have, okay, in terms of how it affects the pig population. Why we're concerned is that it's a controlled disease, among a whole lot of other diseases that are controlled under the Animal Diseases Act in South Africa. So it's a disease that can actually cause, very high mortalities in pigs, up to 100%.
Yeah.
If it's introduced in a herd. So it has the potential of literally decimating the pig industry.
Goodness me.
Yeah, and we know from 2 years ago how the same industry was affected by the listeriosis, and that is why we are on such high alert as far as this disease is concerned, because it's got such a major impact.
Just to clarify and to highlight this point more, if a human consumes pork or any related product that comes from a pig that has got African swine fever, they will be fine. Is that the understanding here?
Yes, it will not cause, let me put it this way, it does not cause disease in humans. However, in terms of our, acts, like your Meat Safety Act, the consumption of diseased animals, it's not condoned. We do not condone the consumption of diseased animals.
Yeah.
But what happens with African swine fever? Most of the times, it causes such high mortalities that the pigs are dead before you even know it.
Yeah.
So the likelihood of them being consumed is very, it's very slim. But also remember that, the pigs, the pork that is consumed, normally sold in retail and many other places, goes through abattoirs. The abattoir system in such a way that you will not get sick animals, especially those sick from African swine fever, slaughtered in abattoirs, because they would be examined before and they would need health certification before, just to ensure that these animals do not come from an area that's got African swine fever or are diseased in themselves and so on. So it's highly, highly unlikely that these pigs will end in the human chain.
Okay.
But, however, if it so happens, for example, we do have a lot of small-scale pig farmers, the individual pig keeper, whether it's in the rural area or that. So a pig might maybe contract the disease. If there's that temptation to eat it, the warning that we need to sound is that, the leftovers, are what we are very concerned about. For example, that pigs, maybe in rural areas or in small-scale operations, are usually fed, scraps, or what is commonly known as swill. So it's that which we are concerned about, that if these pigs enter the food chain and then they end up as swill, then you end up with a situation where live pigs can be fed with,
yes,
that, and then that's how you spread the disease.
That's when the problem starts.
Yes.
So just if we have to look at a difference between Chinese swine fever and the African version, which one is dangerous, and do we have a threat of the Chinese swine fever as well upon us?
The virus there's different sort of types of the African swine fever virus, but they are more or less the same, basically. So what China is experiencing is very similar to what we are experiencing. So is some of the sub-Saharan countries. So yeah, the impact is just about the same.
About the same. How bad is the impact? If we have to look at what it's doing to the agricultural sector, what's happening currently?
Well, at the moment, we've picked it up in localized areas. But the biggest challenge is that we know, for example, the pig industry does export a lot. It supplies a lot, whether it's within the region or even in, among other trading partners, overseas. So what happens is that the moment we have an outbreak like this, you see the biggest challenge is the current one is that unlike what it has been historically in what we call the African Swine Fever Control Zone, which is like almost the whole of Limpopo, some of Mpumalanga, KZN, and the northwestern parts of the Northwest Province. Yeah. Those are the historically controlled zones. So outbreaks in those areas does not really concern us that much, although we keep an eye and implement control measures. But the current outbreaks, as you mentioned in your introduction, this is outside the control zone. Okay. And this alludes to the fact that it means that we have movement of the virus, obviously through pigs, or whether through wild boars, wild pigs, warthogs, from the control zone to the free zone. And this is what we're concerned about, that there are movements that are happening from the infected zone, and which is a concern for us. We should not be having it outside the control zone.
Yeah, and that's the major concern.
Yes, because having it in the control zone does not affect trade, but this has a potential to disturb trade in a very big way, and it can affect the pig industry economy big time. But I just also need to mention the fact that one of the contributing factors to this current outbreak is very much linked with auctions, sale of live pigs in auctions. Yeah. Yes. In every situation we've picked up that except for the Northwest, that there's a lot of movement between auctions. Whether it's in Mpumalanga, Free State, Gauteng, and all that. So that's where the pigs congregate from just about everywhere, and it becomes a mixing pot for the disease. And once an animal that's infected is introduced in an auction, and you know how many buyers buy pigs from auctions, it means that the dispersion can be in any direction. Anywhere in South Africa. So that's the challenge.
Very interesting. Yeah. We've got to unfortunately leave it there, though. But I think you've given us a lot of ideas as to what this is all about. And when we talk about the African swine fever, it's detrimental to the pig community and, of course, to agriculture and those farmers. But for human consumption, at this point, it isn't dangerous. So that's a good thing to know. But nonetheless, don't. If you know anything that's been affected by it, don't go eating it, because that's really not something you want to test. Chief Director of Veterinary Services in Gauteng talking to us, Dr Dietana Nemudzivhadi. Thank you very much for joining us here on the program.
Thank you.
Right, let's take a break.